welcome back to this channel, OHL in 20. This is where we break down all 20 OHL teams, including stats, player predictions, trades, and much more. In this video, well, it's day number 6 of the preseason, and we're going to recap some of the games that took place. There were only 4 matchups that took place on Saturday night. So let's take a look at what actually happened around the Ontario Hockey League on Saturday night. Well, we'll start with the London Knights and the Erie Otters game that took place in St. Thomas, Ontario. Well, it was the London Knights who came out on top 5-4 in the shootout. Now, remember on Friday night, the London Knights capitalizing on the Erie Otters at Budweiser Gardens against the Erie Otters. That was also a score of 5-4, but it was in London and it was in regulation where the London Knights, they won in a shootout over Erie in back-to-back days and back-to-back games against the same Erie team. We'll go off to Brampton now, where the Barrie Colts were holding on to a very strong lead over the Steelheads, but Brampton, they made it a little close, finishing the game as the Barrie Colts reigned victorious in this game 4-3 in Brampton. We'll go to the Flint and Sarnia game, where Sarnia, they were down 3-1 after the second period in Sarnia against Flint, but the Sarnia Sting, they were able to come out on top in the shootout, defeating the Flint Firebirds with a score of 4-3. And last but not least, it was the Oshawa Generals who defeated the Guelph Storm at the Sleeman Center in Guelph on Saturday night, defeating the Storm with a score of 6-5. Let's start with that London Knights game where the London Knights, they defeated the Otters back-to-back games against Erie. At first, it was in London, and this time it was in St. Thomas, Ontario. Well, Erie, yeah, they were technically the home team, but it was technically London who had home ice advantage in St. Thomas, and they defeated the Erie Otters again 5-4, but this time it was in a shootout. Let's see what actually took place in this game. Well, like I said, it was another one-goal decision game where the London Knights defeated the Erie Otters, and both goals were from Sam O'Reilly and Jesse Nurmi as they scored the shootout markers for the London Knights team. It was O'Reilly who also finished with a goal and 3 assists, while Caden Johnson, he had 2 goals and 1 assist to help lead the London Knights to victory over the Erie Otters. It was Pano Femis on the Erie Otters roster who ended up finishing with a goal and an assist on the Otters roster, while it was Owen Wilmore who ended up stopping 10 out of 10 shots for the London Knights before Finn Wilson ended up making 13 saves for the Knights after taking over for Wilmore. And then how did the goaltending progress for the Erie Otters? Well, it was Charlie Burns. He ended up stopping 18 out of 22 shots for the Erie Otters in the shootout, despite the loss. As I guess the loss for Charlie Burns, it wasn't a total loss as he ended up having an assist in this game. Let's head down to the CAA Center in Brampton, where it was the Barrie Colts coming out on top over the Steelheads with a final score of 4-3. I was following this game very closely as a Barrie Colts fan myself. And after the first and second period, I was like, okay, the Barrie Colts could probably hang on to this with a very secured win. Well, this game actually finished closer than I expected, as the Barrie Colts ended up holding on with a 1-goal lead to finish off the end of the game. And credit for the Barrie Colts in terms of goals, it was Ty York, Riley Patterson, Zach Weigel, and Nolan Newton who ended up all scoring for the Barrie Colts in that 4-3 win. In terms of assists for the Barrie Colts, it was Cole Bowen and Carter Lowe who both had 2 assists in this game for the Barrie Colts. On the opposite side of the ice for the Steelheads, it was Luke Dragussia, Angus McDonald, and Porter Matone who also ended up scoring for the Mississauga Steelheads despite losing by a 1-goal advantage. And in terms of the goaltending, Sam Hilbrand, well, he just stood on his head the entire time in this game as he ended up stopping 31 of 34 shots for the Barrie Colts. Well, in terms of the Steelheads, it was Jacob Gibbons who made 29 saves for Brampton despite the 4-3 loss. We're going to head to Sarnia, Ontario, where it was the Flint Firebirds in town to face off against the Sarnia Sting. The Sarnia Sting, they were actually down 3-1 at the end of the second period, but ended up making a tremendous comeback, defeating the Flint Firebirds in a shootout with a score of 4-3. But in terms of goals, it was Alessandra Delirio and Ryan Brown who both had goals for the Sarnia Sting, while Tyson Doucette, he ended up scoring the only shootout goal for Sarnia in the sixth round of the shootout. Evan Malit, he started in net and finished the entire game for Sarnia, and he ended up stopping 22 shots. And we can't forget about Beckham Edwards, who also took credit for one of his goals for the Sarnia Sting, while Christopher Theobardo ended up scoring a pair of goals for the Flint Firebirds, along with Connor Clattenburg. And then, like I said, Evan Malit, he ended up stopping 22 shots for the Sarnia Sting, while Sarnia, they ended up out shooting Flint 34-22. And to finish off the night, it was the Oshawa Generals in town at the Sleeman Center to face off against the Guelph Storm. The Oshawa Generals defeated Guelph in a very close and consistent game with a final score of 6-5. So Harrison Franson, he ended up scoring the deciding goal for the Oshawa Generals at the 8:44 marker of the third period to help push Oshawa to that 1-goal lead for the Generals. Matthew Buckley, he ended up scoring 2 goals for the Oshawa Generals, while Owen Griffin, Jonathan Poliok, and Luca D'Amato, they also ended up taking credit in this game for the Generals over the Guelph Storm. And then it was also Owen Griffin who ended up finishing with 1 goal and 2 assists to finish off the night. Well, in terms of the Guelph goals, it was Cam Allen, Jimmy Sutherland, Jake Carbella, Ryan Singai, and Park Snellgrove. They all ended up scoring for the Guelph Storm to help try and push the Guelph Storm back into the game, but they were just too strong to let Guelph back in this game. So, I mean, we've talked a lot about in the past, especially in preseason, for how many rookies have been making an appearance in the preseason in the OHL. Well, and it was Storm rookie Alex McLean. He ended up finishing with 3 assists in this game. So maybe keep your eye on this individual player for the coming OHL season and see if McLean does end up making an appearance during the regular season for the Guelph Storm. Let's see how the shots and power plays turned out in this game, and then we'll get to the goaltending. So in this game, in terms of shots, Oshawa ended up out shooting the Guelph Storm 43-26, which is a pretty big deficit considering how close this game was. And in terms of the power play, well, Oshawa, the team who came out victorious in this game, they ended up having 8 power plays, but they only succeeded on 1 of those power plays to finish off the night. Well, in terms of the goaltending in this game for Oshawa, it was Isaac Gravel who ended up stopping 21 of 26 shots. So pretty impressive considering how dominant the Guelph Storm were in terms of this game. I mean, they didn't take and a huge amount of shots, but for a team that was out shooting on Guelph, I think it was pretty fair to say that Gravel, well, he had a pretty tremendous night in the crease. Well, in terms of the Guelph goaltending, it was Braden Giuseppe. He finished making 37 saves. I actually saw Giuseppe play in net, and this game was actually at the Sadlon Arena in Barrie during the 2023-2024 regular season. And, well, it was Ben West who ended up getting the victory in net for the Barrie Colts. But Giuseppe, very dominant performance in that game. I actually have some video footage right here, as you can see. And it was Giuseppe. I mean, he was strong in the crease. I mean, I was sitting 2 rows behind the Guelph net. And I mean, Giuseppe, he just had a phenomenal game. This game went all the way to a shootout where Barrie would end up coming away with the win. But I mean, I've seen Giuseppe play, and he's just an outstanding goaltender who has, so much potential ahead of him in the future. And it's going to be interesting to see, is this another potential goaltender that we could see making an appearance in the future of the NHL draft? So we're going to have to see, but I think the Guelph Storm are pretty safe to say that they have a very strong and reliable goaltender in between the pipes for this Guelph Storm organization. So that's just a little recap on what took place on Saturday, September 7th. Tomorrow, on Sunday, September 8th, it is the last day of preseason for the Ontario Hockey League before the regular season ends up getting going underway on Tuesday, September 17th, where the first game is going to be with the Windsor Spitfires at the Sarnia Sting. And then on Wednesday, we're going to have the Barrie Colts at the Owen Sound Attack and the Saginaw Spirits at the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds. That's for regular season. I'm not going to go too far ahead in terms of the regular season schedule right now, but what to expect for the last game of preseason in the Ontario Hockey League for this year. Well, to start us off, and all these games, and these two games are happening at 2 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time on Sunday. We have the Owen Sound Attack facing off against the North Bay Battalion at the North Bay Memorial Gardens, where just below we have the Brantford Bulldogs, and they are going to be heading to the Meriden Center to take on the Niagara Ice Dogs. Expect a very dominant and yet maybe a goal festival in this matchup. Next up at 3:05 p.m., we have the Sudbury Wolves at the Peterborough Petes, but it's not at the Peterborough Memorial Center. It's actually taking place at Norwood Arena. So that's going to be very fascinating to see how that game unfolds, considering that the last time Peterborough played a home game, but not at the Peterborough Memorial Center, it was a shootout win against the Niagara Ice Dogs in Port Hope. So I guess you would say expect a lot of goals in this game as well. Happening at 4 o'clock p.m., and this game is also not happening at the Dow Event Center in Flint, Michigan, but it is happening in Flint. It's happening at the Flint Iceland Arena, and that game is happening at 4 p.m. against the Windsor Spitfires. So that will be a very interesting matchup considering we haven't seen a lot of preseason games taking place at other arenas in the state of Michigan. So that's going to be fairly cool to see. And then to finish off the night, happening at Tribute Community Center in Oshawa, Ontario, it's the Kitchener Rangers in town to face the Oshawa Generals. That game starts at 6:05 p.m. You won't want to miss that, but tomorrow is the last day of preseason. So there's a lot to get excited for to see who ends up even making the rosters for a lot of these organizations. And just to see, who has greatest performance. And what I like to really see at the end of the preseason on Sunday, who ended up leading the league in preseason with goals, assists, goaltending. Who is the best goaltender in the preseason? There's a lot of those stats that you'll find on the Ontario Hockey League website. But until then, be sure to leave a like and subscribe so you don't miss any more of these videos as we get ready for the 2024-25 regular OHL season. Thanks so much, everyone, and we'll see you again soon.